Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. I'm Illya Muchnyk. I'm partner and head of fintech in Kinstellar. I know everyone's busy, so we really appreciate your taking time to be here. We are going to try to keep this session interesting, so hopefully no need to keep an eye on the clock with us. Now let's talk about our speaker today, Masha Stolbova. Masha is the Chief Legal Counsel of Navi. Navi is the top esports teams out there. If you follow esports with top players of Counter-Strike, Dota, Call of Duty, Apex Legends, you have definitely heard of them. So, what is the problem with us lawyers playing video games? Most just cannot pass the terms and conditions screen. So Masha has been deep into esports world for quite a while now, I think many years, and she's here to give us a look at how the legal side of gaming works. Masha has prepared some slides to help us guide through the presentation, and this session she'll break down the structure of the esports industry, who are the key players are, what roles they have, and where lawyers fit in. We will cover one of the biggest questions in the industry: if these sports should be considered a real sport, and what are the legal implications of that. There's actually a debate that people in the industry can seem to agree on, so we are looking forward to hearing your thoughts on that. We will then dive into the real specifics of the sector, such as how the relationship with the players are organized, what is the role of leagues and tournaments, how transfer of players are done, etc. And on organizational side of things, if you have any questions during the presentations, just drop them into the comment section of the chat. We will have some time at the end of the presentation for an interactive discussion. So now let's get into it. I think you'll find the discussion interesting, whether you're new to the export or a pro. And with that, please welcome Masha to our virtual stand.
Thank you so much, Illya. I'm really honored to be here, and thank you for everyone for joining us today. So Illya gave you an amazing summary, a completely correct summary of what will be my topic for today. Basically, esports industry, the legal perspective. I will probably miss out the agenda because Illya covered that really well, so no need to stop on that. Just briefly about me, I'm not only the Chief Legal Counsel in Navi, I also have experience in supporting the transnational transactions, majorly from the tax and corporate perspective. I have the interdisciplinary degree from the International University in Hamburg, which was taught by the law school plus the business school, and I focused on the business side of esports, so this is my extra point in this, having both legal and business expertise in this industry. And I hold the LLM degree from Kyiv Mohyla. I also have the bachelor's in Odessa, related in Ukraine. So just briefly about company I work for, Illya correctly said that if you are somewhere around esports or gaming, you probably will know us. Even if you are not, if you're from Ukraine, it's likely that you also heard about us because we are the Ukrainian company that has now the presence also abroad. For example, in Germany with a big office and facilities. And we are winners of numerous really important titles in esports, including this year, we won 2 major competitions, like the historic first ever CS2 major competition, like the World Championship, and also the Esports World Cup. It's also the World Championship. We have 16 teams, including the female teams in the esports. We have 13 partners and sponsors. I here refer not only to the sponsors like Puma, for example, but also to the game developers cooperation and cooperation with the tournament operators. We have top ranking teams and players, which is obvious because we are Navi, and we are also members of the leagues and revenue share programs. I will tell in details what's that later. And we operate now in 5 jurisdictions, and we expect from the next year to have more in our package.
So, yeah, the biggest questions now for us as lawyers: what is an esport for us as a legal point of view?
That's a huge question, honestly. So I would suggest us to make it a little bit interactive, just a little bit, and I invite everyone to put yes or no in the chat. Should esports qualify as sport, and does esports qualify as sport, honestly? So what do you think so far?
That's quite an adoption happening now. Before that, the esports players used to be perceived like nerds with big glasses, untidy rooms, these kind of things, and now becoming real heroes for the teens and not only.
Okay, we have quite a unanimous approach in the chat. Majority votes for yes. Okay, that's an interesting approach. So I will share mine because I'm the lawyer, so my answer is yes, no, maybe. So basically it depends. So in terms of why it should be yes, because formally esports matches the criteria which are typical for the sport. For example, the Council of Europe gave the definition and the elements of the sport activities, and they include the competitive activities, which esports definitely is, because they're the tournaments, and even if they're the people who don't do it at the tournaments level, they still compete between each other in the teams or individually. It's physical activity. Here, it might be the question though, because some people say, okay, it's just you're just sitting and clicking on the mouse on the keyboard. Is it enough to call it this physical activity? It's enough, honestly. So the esport players, they have also the same supports from the fitness coaches and everyone around. So it's kind of similar support for the body as well. And there is an ecosystem, competitive ecosystem. Yes, there is one, despite it's hectic sometimes, but there is one. And these activities can be practiced in the recreational form. Yes, definitely we can do just go and play computer games just to have fun, not just to do it professionally. So here, yes, it's definitely the esports. But there is so many obstacles, honestly. The ecosystem of the classic sport that we know is too different from what we see in the esports. What I'm talking about is majorly about the structure of the national teams, Olympic committees, like everything that we can imagine talking about the Olympic sports. All this master of sports, the first rank, the second rank, the child ranks, all the hierarchy, all the selections, and overall the idea of the national teams. So this is really not that much familiar to the classic esports. There was recently news about the launch of the European Olympic Sports Games, and I had a lot of questions as the person quite deep in this. So will we see Counter-Strike, for example, on these games? My answer is no, like most likely no. What is the problem? Because first of all, the Olympic Games perceive the most viewed titles to be really violent for the competitions, the Olympic competitions. So the most viewed titles will not be there, like Dota as well. And also the level of competition is super low because the national teams are majorly not professional teams. So the top teams you will see are international teams. So in our team, we have, let's say, Counter-Strike team. We have people from Ukraine, we have people from Finland, Romania, Lithuania. And so this brings everyone together. We have the esports coach from Ukraine, the performance coach from Poland. So it's completely international, and we are not limited by this. And
what is the global trend of regulating the esports? Are we moving towards recognizing it as a proper sport, so to say?
So the global trend, I would say that at the national level so far, we see the trend that esports is considered a non-Olympic sport. The same as, for example, in Ukraine. Where does it lead us? It honestly, in my opinion, creates so far more problems than opportunities. But we also have to look at this in the long-term perspective. So at this very point of time, we have the situation when the recognition as the sport, like the athletes at the national levels, is the problem for visas, for taxes sometimes. Because, for instance, back in 2019, let's say, or 2021 even, it was not a problem to go for a tournament in the US, just having the B1, B2 visa. Now, if you write that you're the esports athlete and you have the invitation for the tournament, you will have to apply for the special athlete visa, P1 visa, which requires definitely to have the agent in the US who will apply for the petition from the government, and it costs a lot of money. So the cost went up and it's harder to get this visa. And in terms of the taxes, for example, there is the special taxation regime for the income of the athletes. So if the country officially recognizes esports as sports, we will lose the part of the payment because of the withholding tax in the country where the tournament is held. But if it's not, doesn't recognize in the majority of the cases, it will be just the business profit. So it will not be taxed in the paying country. Of course, it's like generalization. We have to look at the particular countries. So far, it causes more troubles, but in long-term perspective, it may have a good effect and just become something like we understand, something like we would understand under the general term of sport, like just grow to the football scheme and to have, national teams, but also really good commercial leagues. So let's see how it goes. In Germany, for example, also another good example, they have the special regulation for esports, so you can get the special residence permit. On the other hand, majority of the European states require the esports agreements to be the employment contracts. And the flexibility of esports and dynamic of the industry has nothing to do with the employment contracts, honestly. And this is a huge problem. So I will talk a little bit in details later about the players' contracts. But yes, so here when the absolutely traditional approach matches with the strict legal systems, so far it's a little bit more trouble than a benefit. So yeah, my answer just saying that esports is sport, it doesn't solve the legal challenges. That's my brief answer.
And sometimes even creates more troubles when the state's trying to put their hand into traditionally self-regulating industry. So now let's move to the most interesting topic, the industry structure. The most challenging part, managing relationship between the esports ecosystem, players, teams, publishers, tournament operators, etc. That's something really interesting to learn.
Yeah, so that's definitely something I was fond of to understand comprehensively during my business education, and happen to have this simple approach now to this issue. So overall, the idea that we have people who are the players, so it can be us, but to be the players in the esports and the competitive esports, they should be professionals. So players who do that really well, they unite into the teams, or they can also play individually. It really depends on the title. They play the games that are created by the publishers, by the game developers. And what happens now, where it goes on to the next level, it happens at the events which are hosted by the tournament operators. Why these tournament operators are here in gray? Because sometimes the publishers or the game developers, they have their own tournaments. So for example, Riot Games, they themselves regulate everything and take care of all the events. They rarely outsource that. They just sometimes grant the right to hold some event somewhere, but the main leagues are organized by Riot themselves, like for Valorant and for League of Legends. So yeah, there can be either tournament operator or just the game publisher. And these events, they are streamed to the platforms, or they happen on LAN, as we called it, on the stadium or some venue where people can join. And everything is for fans to come and see that, or in person or online. So this is the clean structure of the industry. And as Ilya mentioned, it's really self-regulated, and everything honestly comes from the publishers. So the powerhouse here are the publishers, because they hold the intellectual property, they hold the licenses. So they are the regulators. Whatever they say goes in this direction. And the second powerhouse can be tournament operators. If they are really effective, they can build around themselves the leagues and so on. That will be the next point we'll talk about. Yep. But at the same time, the players and the teams, depending on how big is the brand and how strong is the team professionally, have also a huge bargaining power on the publishers, because they want someone skillful and someone familiar to the public to play their games, to bring more fans to their games. At the same time, the tournament operators have the same logics. So if the strong players and the familiar players play at their events, they have more sponsors. So this is all, the industry is really dependent, each element of the industry really depends on the other elements, and that's the really self-regulated industry. And whenever there is anyone trying to interfere the industry, it really shakes the whole industry.
And now, Masha, here comes the most interesting and important question. Where does the money come from? It's not just fun and games, people pushing buttons, killing each other online, but and we all hear that there is a lot of money circulating there. So how it works?
I honestly wouldn't say that there at least enough money in esports. So we sometimes at least used to call that we were in the period of the esports winter because of the some changes that Valve Inc., the game developer and publisher of Counter-Strike and Dota, made last year, which damaged the ecosystem. They just banned some leaks. So basically, in like super basic understanding, the money comes from the fans, because the end purpose of all these activities, why the publishers are interested in having all this ecosystem of esports, is to bring more people playing their games, buying their in-game items, and just monetizing their games. So that's the end purpose. But of course, it's impossible to imagine that just fans sponsor all this industry. So from the beginning, when the game or the team is formed, we come to the investors, and the teams, publishers, TOs, and platforms all have the investors. The way the investments are structured and managed is just as in any kind of activities. So you can have the VC format of funding, you can have any kind of format of funding, which is just common on the market in a particular country. So there is honestly nothing super specific. And the second thing where the money comes from, like the revenue stream, the sponsors. Here we have the sponsors quite often just for the players. So imagine some football players who have individual sponsors. Here is just the same. They bring money to the teams. I wouldn't say that these are just super huge money, but they're enough to run the operations. The tournament operators, they have also sponsors. If the publisher is the tournament operator, then the deal is between publisher and the sponsor, and of course the platforms do. So you will always, whenever you watch the tournament or often the stream of the players or the social media of the teams, you will see a lot of sponsors there, hopefully a lot of sponsors, because this means the team runs operations well. So money comes from these two, and sometimes the sponsors can appear as the investors, so the relations can be really different. It really depends. It was quite a popular thing, especially in the CS region, especially I think in Russia, and it's still popular there, what they do. The betting companies come as the investors, invest money, like buy the team, and also act as their sponsor. So this is also something that happens often in this industry. This is not that common in the European level, at least at the top tier level, because there it's more about sustainable business as well, not about just one team playing. But sometimes you can also see the same happen in Europe, or we have Favbet team in Ukraine. So this is just one industry, one title, teams, Counter-Strike, and that's it. And they are officially the Favbet team.
Is it common that the sponsorship agreements with the players are kind of similar to those of traditional sports, where, for example, sponsor would invest some money to the player and then agree that would be some return over time paid back to the sponsor, or it is not yet come to that stage?
I don't think I haven't seen or heard about any kind of this transaction. The most common so far remains when there is just something more similar to the typical marketing service agreement when the players will grant certain promotion services, and that's it. Maybe appear at some event or use particular device to play, or just make posts on social media or place the banner on Twitch. So that's the major approach so far. So I haven't heard about any other approach. And honestly, in esports, if it's like the team title, if it's not like individual one like StarCraft, but it requires the teamwork, it honestly, in my opinion, doesn't make sense to invest just in the player. You can invest in the player, and if the team is not that strong in general, so you have one good player who develops well thanks to the investments, but all other 4 people don't work that well because of the lack of the investments or whatever. This doesn't make sense because the team still doesn't work as the unit, and they don't bring the titles to you. So they don't have the prize money, they get less of share from in-game items. So you just can't rely on the return on investment in this case.
And what is the relationship between the player and the team? Would the player give up some of the percentage of the profits to the team in exchange for the services, promotion, etc., or how it's organized?
So historically, we should understand that the whole esports, it evolved just from people who went to the computer clubs and played there, and their income was with the prize money. And then when the clubs or organizations, you can call it in any way, emerged, and the industry became more complex. So the players had to read some documents, do some visas or something. So that's the problem that now the clubs take care of. Of course, the issue of sharing the revenue somehow appeared. So yes, the players will give a part of their prize payment to the clubs. They will give a share of the in-game items. So whatever. So each game has a particular tool for monetization. So it can be in-game items, different sets, different bundles, and so on. So if there is the club item, it can be one share. If it's the individual player's item, it can be different share. The prize money again. So each club has different structure. So far, the trend is still that the clubs don't benefit too much from, for example, this kind of prize money share because it's not that big. Still, they give away majority to the players. So, but the core benefit for the players is that they get the salary now from the clubs. So, yeah, I wouldn't say they lose too much by giving this share to the club.
And what is the revenue of the teams or clubs?
So in terms of the revenue streams that the clubs have, the first one, I would say in terms of the priority, again, it really depends on the level of the team. If it's top tier team like Navi or some other European organizations like G2 or Vitality, I would say that the first one probably will be the income from the leagues. We will talk about this later and what happened. So some revenue share programs with the game developers where there is some stipendiums, regular payments, share, like minimum guarantee payments. So I would say that this, at least so far, it's the biggest one. We will see how it works next year because there are major changes in ecosystems. Then I would say the sponsorship money, then the revenue from the in-game items from the publishers, like this payments from Steam by Valve, for example. The sponsorship deals, the prize money, and yeah, that's it. So also those who have merch, if they develop their own collections, own drops, this is also the income for the club, of course. Sometimes just there are no separate merchandise units or shops, so it's not something super big, except from the uniform. But for us, for example, FaZe, they also have a huge merch department and they have amazing collaborations.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I will just jump now to the leaks. So what is that? As I told, the whole idea of the publishers and tournament operators to bring money, of course, and to integrate fans. And fans are interested in seeing the best players and the best teams and to see the beautiful game in the end and to enjoy the vibe of the community being around them. You can now see the fun sectors at the games, which is, I think, really cool. It's still not like the football fun sector, but still something really interesting developing. And to so if the publisher or tournament operator is able to bring the fans, they can also bring the sponsors to this event. So, and if the publisher and tournament operator needs the top players to bring the fans, they have to somehow talk to the teams and offer them something, because they want the teams in the end to secure their schedule for particular tournaments, like let's say 5 tournaments per year, 10 tournaments per year. And the teams are like, okay, so if we secure this schedule, what is the return for us? We can see that there is a tournament with a bigger prize pool, so why don't we move there? So what will be the return? And in the end, we have the leagues of the most of the top teams in the results and the business metrics that get the revenue share of the revenue from all the income that the tournament operator gets, either the publisher or tournament operator again. So far we have among the biggest leagues like this, we have the leagues by ESL Pro League. We are the part of this league, and this is a huge revenue for us, really important revenue. Also, the second big league is Blast Premier League. This is from Denmark. ESL is from Germany. And these are both Counter-Strike leagues. What happened last year is Valve said, congratulations, guys, we are banning all the commercial leagues because we want it to be sport, first of all, and second of all, to be business. And this is honestly really a huge damage to the industry, because these leagues, they honestly balance between the sport performance criteria and the business performance criteria to join the league. So at first the league formed from the top teams in terms of performance, like the most familiar teams and the most marketed teams. And there was the free union, but now it costs money to get places in these leagues. And so some teams bought the slots in these leagues just last year, and they won't get the return on investments because of that. And so this really ruins all the ecosystem. One of the most sustainable ecosystems like of the leagues is League of Legends by Riot Games. And the same we have now for Valorant. They launched this in, I think, 2022. Yeah, that was 22. The first season was last year. And they are more sustainable. They don't offer that huge revenues, but they are definitely more stable. They have experience with the League of Legends, which is really great experience, honestly. And now we cooperate with Riot Games, and so they pay us more shares. We get the shares and so on. We play their titles at a different level of the tournaments. In return, we have to provide a huge amount of marketing performance, and so involve our players also in the marketing activities. And also, there is now a huge popularity of the Mobile Legends Bang Bang game, especially in Asia. So they have the national leagues. We are looking close to them. So considering one as one of the points for our development there. Which is done by majority of the European clubs, honestly. So yeah, leagues is something that is really vital for the esports in terms of the stability of the ecosystem and ability to at least have stable revenue. We have now a really exciting phenomenon of the esports World Cup and the cooperation with the clubs, like incentive program. This is done by Saudi Arabia. They are now really dominating in the esports in terms of the pooling money there. And what they did, the Sports World Cup, is the competition for 20 plus titles. So during 2 months during the summer, they hold the huge events with a huge prize money, honestly huge prize money for the winning teams. And also they have a pool of $20 million for the top teams. So if you have to collect the scores, the points in all the titles, and in the final ranking, if it depends how top you rank there, the first team got $7 million for winning like the biggest amount of points in total in all the disciplines. We were, I think, 6th or 5th, so we also got quite a sum from them. And also they have the incentive program, just supporting the teams in expanding the presence in different titles. So this is now an interesting trend. Let's see how it goes. And also Saudi Arabia is in charge of the International Esports Federation. Industry is a little bit skeptic about their activities, but let's see how it will be. And also, Saudi Arabia will host the Olympic sports games next year. Like it will be between the summer games and the winter games so far. Yeah, so this ecosystem changes. Maybe we won't see the leaks in 10 years or something, but so far this is one of the main trends and really important trends.
Okay, and here's the most pragmatic and interesting question for us as lawyers, as the industry is really something which is not common and standard for the traditional lawyering mindset. So this is the question in the yellow circle. Where are we as lawyers here in this picture?
In terms of my work, at least, so I am here everywhere except from the platforms. We don't often work with the platforms unless it comes to the streams, like complying with the regulation of Twitch, for example, to stream there. But that's I don't say that this is something major in terms of the work. So pretty much everywhere, because if you are a successful team, you interact with everyone in the industry. Yeah, and of course, like platforms are also there, but just in smaller amounts, in tiny amount, I would say. But yes, just bringing it all together in an interaction with everyone. So of course, if it's a small club which has just one team, like 5 players, maybe coach, and they just play. They don't take part in any kind of business activities. They don't have investors. They're just gathering for fun. They will have relations only with the publishers. They will just read the agreement, the terms when they join the tournament. That's it. But otherwise, yes, the lawyers are everywhere.
And how the relationship with team players are organized? Are you using some sort of employment agreements or civil law contracts or other arrangements?
Yeah, good question. So yeah, here's on the slide is everything that, not everything, but just like major kind of activities that we do, because I am sure I missed something out. I see that privacy issues not here, but we do them. So in terms of the players, like contracts are, of course, the main part of our activities and honestly our core assets. So here, I would say that, yeah, as I told, the majority of the countries in Europe, like Germany or let's say Spain or Portugal, they require this to be the employment contract. So there is direct requirement. I wouldn't say that this is the super correct approach to structuring the relations, even from the logics of the employment relations. Yes, the clubs somehow control and limit the player because the agreements are majorly exclusive, so they can't just jump to the other employer, like the other club. But the point is that the players do the same things, even if they have club or if they don't have the club. So there is no that many relations of the superiority, there is no so much control in the actions of the players. But yeah, so this question is debatable again, but the legislation requirements are the requirements. So yes, so we have the employment contracts, or we have the mixed form of the agreements. So it will be just, it can be called in different ways. You can have the independent service agreement in some countries. You can have just the player agreement, and there will be the mixture of the issues. So it will be the marketing elements, the exclusivity elements. In turn, there will be the compensation for the services by the club, the revenue share element. The club gets something, the player gets something from the revenue we generate from the activities. Of course, the licenses, because honestly, the intellectual property is the most crucial thing in the esports. Given that esports is inherently digital, the IP is just inevitable part of that. And yeah, so also for the players, in terms of the contracts, we have sometimes some leagues have the requirements to relocate the players to particular countries. Let's say Valorant League, Riot Games, they have several leagues in the world. We are the part of the EMEA League, and we have the hub city in Berlin. So we had to incorporate there and to make sure that our players are eligible to work there. So it was our option to get the visas and work permits there, and to get the employment relations with them in Germany, and to like we also take care of the migration, taxes, and everything related to the players.
In terms of employment relations with the players, we usually tend to believe that players are kind of unorganized, hectic people, which do not, wash their hands and all this kind of things. Are there any real restrictions to train regularly, to comply with internal regulations, and how it's usually done?
I've seen numerous approaches to that. So overall, yes, the players are hectic, and sometimes they sleep long. They play till 4 a.m. or something, then sleep long. So all the players definitely understand that if they miss the official match, they're in troubles, and that's not the trouble of the club that much. So the club is not the main enforcer in this case, but it's the tournament. So this is not in their very interest to miss these matches. So they align the schedule with that, at least their own schedule in their head. And overall, so we know how intervene into the schedule of the practice rounds, of the coaching sessions or something. This is done by the team themselves. So at least when the players come to the clubs like Navi or some big clubs, they already understand why they're there, that they want to win something, they want to perform at the particular level, not just sit on the salary, because we part away quickly with the players like this. And yes, so they have the inner motivation, and of course there are some times that they miss the sessions, they come late to the boot camps. We have the possibility to impose the penalties on them and just fine them for that. We don't often do this because we're more about having good relations with our players. It's been my 5th year in Navi, so 4.5 years, and there were like maybe less than 5 instances of fining the players. Like overall, we have more than 100 players. So this is kind of, we know the words, how to make them work. So we have the team manager who is responsible for the schedule, talks to the coach. The coach also pushes the teams. So yeah, if we need, we have the head of team management who talks to them and helps, or we have the head of esports who is involved in some crisis management. So yeah, this somehow works. And I think it works quite well because we're talking about the professional level of the players.
And now coming back to sponsors and partners, how it organized? Is there a sponsorship contract between the sponsors and the team, or are the players prohibited to have direct sponsorship contract with electronic equipment companies or crypto companies or whoever separately from the team? For example, in normal sports, players are maybe restricted to do that.
Yeah, looks quite similar. So starting from the general sponsorship, it's majorly the agreements, the service agreement. We will give the services, promotion services. Really depends on what is the nature of sponsorship. So if it's like the sponsorship by the gaming chairs, we will do one kind of integration. And if it's Puma or I don't know, Logitech, it will be different completely. So, but anyway, it will be more of the marketing services nature. Sometimes we get in return the supply of goods in addition to the payments. So, and of course, one of the really interesting things that we have to know about the sponsorship agreements, that's all the tournament operators and the game publishers, they have the blacklist of sponsors. So sometimes it will be the case if you go for the risky sponsor, like gray zone sponsor, whatever you call that. So like betting, gambling, cryptocurrency, NFTs, and so on. You should be aware what to sell to the sponsor if you will be in a position to promote them everywhere and universally. So for example, you will see in our social media, if you go there, that in Katowice, several years ago, we didn't have the logo of our main title sponsor on just in the chest, just because the local regulation required us to have the license, our sponsor to have the license there to be promoted. Now they sorted this out and we have them on the t-shirt, on the jersey. But the point from the contract view is that you have to write everything of this in the contract, so not to get punished either by the tournament operator or by the sponsor if you don't perform the services. So here is the balance. Also, sometimes we have to balance between the tournament operator sponsors and our sponsors. So it's often that the clubs and the tournament operators are both sponsored by the sponsors of the same category, and we have to know how this is regulated. Fortunately, majority of the tournaments are adequate and they allow us to promote our sponsors in parallel. So it's fine if you sit on the chair of Secret Lab at the Counter-Strike major tournaments, and your company at the same time promotes, as we do, like the back force chairs. So yeah, these are the things that we consider. And of course, if it's about the delivery of the goods, you have to choose the transaction structure if you don't want to have too much accounting. And yeah, that's also the point to consider.
And how the tournaments and leagues are organized? Are they sort of organizations of several teams, or are they separate entities that run their own business and just have contractual relationship with the teams and players?
These can be both. So, for example, ESL and Blast, this is kind of their, it's not the partnership or not something like this, because the agreement is structured in a very, smart way to avoid any kind of corporate and tax consequences in a particular jurisdictions. The point is that, yes, this is more about the in the end, the service agreements, but this is the idea of granting the licenses and building the on these logics, the payments. So the payments are also structured. You get the different categories of payments. And in terms of the tournaments, you will just have the TPA, Tournament Participation Agreement, with one entity. So, and this will be kind of the entity whose main activities is to organize the tournaments. That's it. So sometimes you can have, for example, you have the main tournament operator who will outsource the activities to someone in a particular country because it's easier for them to do in this way, and that's why it can look in a different way, these contractual structures. But overall, you will for the tournaments, you will have the TPA, the Tournament Participation Agreement, with one company, and rule book by this company as well. So it will be in this way. And just jumping quickly back to the point of individual sponsorships, I forgot to mention about this. We don't ban the direct sponsorships, but of course, we make sure that they do not interfere with our main sponsor. So, for example, our player can't promote the other sponsor if we have exclusive contract with them. So let's say our players can't promote in the same category. Again, just coming back to the examples, we have the Pro Kit from Puma this year, like for the last 3 years. And imagine that our player comes at wearing Adidas to some esports event. It will be a huge scandal. So yeah, this of course is guaranteed, but otherwise it's fine. And the distribution of money, it really depends on the relations, and this is different for all the kind of clubs. Majorly, if the club brings the player an individual sponsor, there will be some share. If the player gets the sponsor himself or herself, it will be different approach. So it's all variable, but I would say that here it's more like the sports in regular sports.
Right. Yeah. And now to the back side of operations of the team, there is a non-player staff making things happen, staying behind the scenes. In practical terms, for Navi, how many? What is the numbers? How many are players? How many are support staff? Just roughly for us to get the impression.
I would say the proportion is 1-to-1, or maybe staff is like 75% of the players. So the point is that we have different models of organizing the cooperation with people. So some functions are done by the freelancers, some are done by the staff. We have staff quite all over the world. We have more stable like back office, of course, because we have to manage legal stuff, finance, we have head of esports and operations. So it's quite a typical approach to in any company. And yep, so then we go into the particular functions. Okay, so we have to manage the relations with the partners. Who does that? Okay, we have the account managers who do that. We need to design the materials for our partners and so on. We need to do the integrations. Okay, we need the designers, how we cooperate with them. Do we need someone to be in the staff, or we just are fine to have the freelancers? So it's all really flexible. Again, just the industry is so rapidly moving all the time that the cost cutting, honestly, in this industry is a new trend, like in any kind of sports, in any kind of business, I would say. But now, in my opinion, the esports is becoming more professionally from the business side. So we have more professional managers, not just the fans of esports who had a lot of prize money and opened the clubs. So we have more effective organizations. So yeah, it can be completely different. But so far, I would say Navi, it's 75% of staff compared to the players.
Thank you very much. And before moving to the closing of the presentation, just a bit more of a relationship of the lawyers within the ecosystem. So we see quite a lot of moving parts of the sports mechanism. And where do you think the lawyer has the biggest impact in the structure, and what are the most, let's say, overlooked areas that lawyers can add value, and what are the unique legal challenges for the lawyers to work in the industry, just from your insider experience?
So I would say that let's go from the simple structure of the organization to more complicated, because Navi is it's a full service business, so it's hard to compare with a purely sports unit so far. So let's imagine that we have a team of 5 people who play Counter-Strike, and they get the investor or something, so it's a typical question, or they get the coach and so on, so they want to stay as the team and have some IP. So at this level, it's not just to have some outsourced lawyer who will do the agreements with the players, between investor and players, maybe like the sponsor and the players, and regulate the relations with them, and just give them the hints about taxes, about the relations with the tournament operator, about the TPAs, about the intellectual property. Maybe they want to have their own brand. So this is the simplest thing which happens. And this shows that even at the basic level, the players are the core asset. So if we grow all this ecosystem and we have more relations with the sponsors, with the leagues and tournament operators, we have, of course, more issues arising, because at some point of time you have to think about the corporate structure, and you can't handle all the stuff within one jurisdiction anymore. So you can afford yourself the corporate structure and tax optimization. So if you have merge, you have to think about all the other aspects with the import, export, and customs relations overall. So you have to protect the brand. You at some point have the issues of the transfers of the players, and you have to do all of that. So I would say that the main part of the lawyer's attention in the esports are the players' agreements. And I would say that this is kind of the monumental mistakes of everyone in esports. So I closely monitor all the disputes, all the news about the players leaving the organization, so any kind of things happen in the organizations, just to make sure this doesn't happen to us. And when I came to the organization, it took me like 6 months or something to navigate in what's going on and where I am actually. And then I completely changed the contract. So we developed a completely different model of relations with the players, and different. It's not only about the legal design of the document, but majorly about the essence. So yeah, for our players, their transfers and so on. But if we talk about the really complicated structures, here comes even the involvement of the outside legal counsel. So when we were structuring the company in Germany, I was lucky to study in this time in Germany, so I was close on the close proximity, just 2 hours by train, and I could handle majority of the things. But even in this case, I will not take responsibility for the taxation in Germany, honestly. So corporate tax is one thing, but the payroll is completely a headache for us. So how this works for us, we involve also the external lawyers now, majorly for the corporate tax issues. We also have the intellectual property specialist in Europe who takes care of all the stuff. Of course, I still read all the materials they submit. I'm responsible for developing the strategy. So what we do, if we go for the trademark expansion, if we go for the just international registration, or what we do overall, and how we do this step by step, because overall it's expensive. We ourselves do cease and desist letters stuff, but everything else is outsourced. And of course, sometimes we will outsource migration because it's something super local, like inherently national legislation stuff, where we can read tons of materials, and that wouldn't be that effective as to work with someone externally. Yeah, so taxes, sometimes customs, like we have brokers, of course, migration, and in Germany we also used the lawyers to develop the employment contracts. But just for you to understand the involvement, so that was the company that really specializes in the esports, so they work with a lot of companies, and even despite they have a huge experience, I would say that they spend around 40 hours or something for the contract, but I will also spend a little bit less, but I would say 70% of the time our legal counsel, external counsel spent on that, we spent pretty much the same.
Thank you very much. That was quite an impressive overview. We are moving to the end of the session and have some time for the questions. So please have your questions from the audience.
Yeah, I will close this.
Georgi?
Yep. Thanks, Masha. Thank you very much for the wonderful presentation and all the details. At least for me, it was great what the insights shared. Thanks. I have a question. You briefly touched upon this, and it is related to transfers and M&As. Is this on one side how transfers are organized? Because you mentioned that some players could leave the team. Is it like in regular sports? You are selling the transfer to another team, or you're just terminating the employment agreement? And on the other side, is an M&A something that is kind of maybe not yet common, but something that we can see in esports to acquire a whole team, to acquire a company organization like Navi, or smaller, of course?
So majorly it will look like in classic sports, because honestly, esports takes a lot of inspiration from the regular sports, because we don't have any other source of inspiration. Law doesn't help us. There is no regulation. We have to invent something, and it doesn't make sense to invent the bicycle if there is already the one. So talking about the transfers, yes, majorly we will just trade the players with other organizations. So we will have the mechanism that prevents the situation when, okay, so we terminate the player and the player doesn't sign with a new company, we don't get money, we don't have players, so of course we have the tools to not to have this situation. Sometimes I would say that M&As are not that common because it often doesn't make sense. So let's imagine if we need to sign, it would make sense if, let's say, the company which currently owns the team has some slot in a particular league, and we want to get this company together with a slot. So for example, if we want to buy the League of Legends slot, we would probably talk about this kind of deal, like M&A, typical acquisition deal, or maybe just the assignment of the whole team and the agreement to another company. So it really depends. I wouldn't say M&As are common just because it's quite burdensome in terms of resources, and yeah, just going to a new jurisdiction completely unfamiliar, and just doing this is quite an issue for the teams in terms of the resources, because our resources are not unlimited, unfortunately. So majorly, if there is no other reason to buy exactly to have this company, we will go for the regular transfer of the players, even if it's like the full team. We bought the full team from one Chinese company, I think, back in 2022. So it was just the transfer of the players, 5 players or 4 players. Yep. So that's the answer to the question, I think. And sometimes just about the terminations, of course, some people sometimes just want to stop playing, stop doing this professionally because they're tired or like for whatever reason this may happen. I know that majority of the clubs don't have this, but we really treat our players honestly with respect. So we sometimes, so it's not sometimes, it's just their opportunity to leave the club. If they just leave the career, we're completely fine with that. We allow them to go, and we don't ask for returning call, like paying us the termination fee, like majority of the clubs. But in case during quite a long period of time, if they start playing for another club, we will consider this transfer and will require the transfer fee.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Any other questions? Okay, you feel free to answer a question. We are coming to the closing of the sessions, and big thanks to Masha for such an insightful presentation.
Sorry, I see the question in chat.
Okay, yeah, go on. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, why there are different leagues for men and women in esports? Okay, a good question. I don't know for sure. I will just share my assumption on that, because where it comes from, because we are part of the ESL league as the Pro ESL league, and also we have the ESL Impact team. I would say that the difference is based on the overall number of professional players and how familiar are these players among male and female teams. So female teams, unfortunately, so far are less well known. But honestly, when I was in Katowice, I didn't go to the final of on the main stage, and I watched the final of the Impact competition. It was more interesting to me, honestly. So the female teams finals. I would say that's again about money, about the views, hours watched, and all these business metrics. And the numbers that you will see in the male and female leagues so far, they are super different. But I really enjoy that there are the leagues that support the female teams because the prize money is super low, so they really need this support.
Thank you. That's really the topic that we should be very careful answering now against the current agenda, because sometimes it may be considered as a not politically correct and not proper. So the gender issues in sports and now esports becoming more and more of a sometimes contested topic.
We also have these debates in the last couple of years because the things that happen in sports happen also in the esports and the competitions. So yeah, that's a challenge for everyone, I feel like. So yeah, we have to balance here so many things. Yeah, but it's really good that we have this, at least the leagues and overall legitimate operators, they are super open and they really promote this spirit of good competition and sportsmanship, friendship supports. So it really brings this community to being not that toxic as it could be, just playing the games, you know.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we are running out of time. That's bring us to the end of today's presentation. Once again, big thanks to Masha for such an insightful session. She really walked us through a lot of grounds here, from the structure to exports industry to the roles of players, teams, and how legal issues come into play, and some big questions like whether exports should be considered as a sport and what it means in terms of laws and regulations involved. Masha also broke down some key relationships in the industry, from players to teams to sponsors to leagues and tournaments. And hopefully that gives you a clear picture of how complex world of esports works. It's definitely not just fun and games and everything, and it's a full-blown industry with plenty of opportunities and challenges involved. So we do hope with Masha that you're walking away with a better understanding of how lawyers fit into the structure. Feel free to ask your questions. We will be able to answer them separately if you wish. Send them to us by email or whatever means of communication you might have. And once again, thank you, Masha, for sharing your expertise. Thank you, everyone, for time and interest. It's been a great discussion. Hope all of you found it valuable, as I personally did. So with that, thank you very much. We bring the session to a close, and see you next time.
Thank you so much. It was my huge pleasure. Thanks again.